that dad that's out there, or that parent that's out there, I think like really be in the present moment. I think there's all these things that we feel so much pressure where it's like, I need to do this right now. I need to do that right now. And ultimately, the last thing you'll want is to regret not being there when your son or daughter came home and was super excited about this art project they had just made, and you were out here on your phone trying to text somebody back.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Michaela Pereira. So glad you're here. You know, my team and I the other day were talking about fathers and fatherhood. I have a great one. I feel very lucky. Love you, Pops. It got us wondering about fatherhood in 2024. What is on the minds of dads? What's keeping them up at night? And how are they approaching fatherhood differently? Like, does it differ greatly from the generation that raised them? So I did what any reasonable person does. I asked a DJ. Not just any DJ. This DJ happens to be the host of the incredible podcast, A Tribe Called Dad. Entrepreneur, educator, husband, and dad of 4, and my friend, DJ Hapa, joins me now to talk all things fatherhood. What's going on, Dad?
Ah, man, I am good, but these kids, yeah, it's wild out here. Just, I guess to start off, you know, the current update, we have 4 kids. They're 10. Our daughters are 10 and 8 now. So 5th grade and 2nd grade, and then I've got my little guys. So I've got 3. Joe is 3, and Zion is gonna be 1 soon.
Um, who's the most work currently?
Probably the baby
The
right
baby.
now. A toss up between the 3-year-old and the baby.
Okay. 3-year-olds are
But the
busy.
baby's mobile.
Yeah.
The 3-year-old is all over the place, and
Yes.
he's wild. But like, at least you could still, he understands quite a lot.
Sure.
Whereas
1-year-old's just on you.
the
Just need
baby's just,
everything from you.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and the thing is, by 4, you've got a cadence now, right? You've got a
Oh
rhythm. You
yeah.
guys are like a well-oiled machine, question mark?
Yes, and at the same time, I think, with each kid brings different challenges, and I think one of the things that you even were talking about just a minute ago that I think is super important to remember when it comes to parenthood for us is that each kid is different, and they're different little human beings, and what worked with one does not work with the other. It's kind of like DJing, I mean, like every night is a different crowd. You never know, like, these songs worked last night, these aren't going to work, tonight. So
You know what I did not expect today was to find out that there was, a Venn diagram of how parenthood would actually overlap with DJ-ness. Like this is
oh, I could do it
amazing.
with DJing for everything. I mean, yeah, I could tell you how cooking's like DJing, or like how anything is like DJing. I mean, it really is the key to my life, essentially.
Oh my goodness, it's too funny. Okay, so we got to tell people a little bit about how you and I met. It was back in the day when I was working at KTLA in Los Angeles, the local TV station. Worked there for pretty near a decade, and we had a 9 o'clock hour of the show that was a little more like fun and loosey goosey. It was myself, Cher Calvin, and Jessica Holmes, and we had a DJ. We thought we were so fancy because we had a DJ. And that's where we met, and I fell in love with you, and we have been fond friends ever since. And tell people about your DJ trajectory. How did it start for you?
Yeah, I never thought I'd be DJing on the news in the morning, waking up at the crazy hours that we
I'm
used to
sorry
have to
about
get up
that.
for.
Yeah, sorry
Uh,
about that.
but no, I think I never expected to be a career DJ.
Mm,
This was something that I got into in high school, and then really got into it when I was at college. I went to school at UCLA,
mhm.
and that's when, met friends, met DJs that were better than me, and sort of, but what I started to see was, you know, for all of my friends that were older than me, the day they graduated was like the last day they DJ'd, essentially. Like, I just saw people like falling off the cliff. Like,
And now it is a hobby from my past. It's not a way I'm going to make a living. Well, I mean, at that point, we're similar-ish vintage. You're several years younger than I am, but I'm not sure that at that time in the world we were thinking of career trajectory as a DJ.
no, and the opportunities were a lot
Limited,
smaller.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot more limited, and I've been really fortunate. I mean, I've been incredibly blessed to be on this journey, and it's taken me all over the world.
You're on your way to Ibiza.
Yeah, yes, this is true. This the center of dance music, and so I feel like, gosh, I couldn't have written this story at all. And I'm just excited to be on this journey and to be able to experience all of these things. But, I think the biggest thing that DJing has provided me is an opportunity to really connect with different people from
Yeah,
all different walks of life and
yeah,
to, be able to share life with folks, whether that
right.
be on a dance floor or, whatever it is, like on a podcast or, in a TV studio or whatnot.
Well, and that's the thing, because so it brings us back to the world of podcasting. So there is interconnectivity in all of this, y'all. I'm not just randomly talking to a DJ about fatherhood, because he is a father of four. He hosts this podcast, A Tribe Called Dad. You can see the DJ references. He and I share a love of A Tribe Called Quest, by the way. You host this with two other DJs, and you all are fathers.
Yeah. And I think that there's something so beautiful about being able to connect with other people that are, cut from a similar cloth, but also being able to connect with people that like walk a completely different walk, but have this intersection point. And like, yeah, not to keep making DJ references, but I
Go
mean, it
ahead.
really is true. I mean, that's what I'm doing when it comes to, how does this Bob Marley tune, like, where's the intersection point between this Bob Marley track and this Calvin Harris song? Like,
Right,
like
right.
where is that?
Yeah.
And there is a space where that can
Mhm.
happen. And so, I think podcast provides that same opportunity, and certainly a podcast about fatherhood or just the experience of fatherhood or parenthood. Everybody either has a dad, is a dad, had a dad,
Wants
wish
to
they had
be
a
a
dad,
dad, right,
wants to be a dad. And so, I think when you have a subject matter that is so big and broad, such as parenthood,
and
but it also
relatable.
is so it's so important, like in
Mhm.
terms of like who I think we all sort of identify with at
Yeah.
some point. We all identify as either being a son or a daughter or being a parent. And,
Mhm.
depending on what your life stage is and what, you're working on, I mean, fatherhood becomes a part of that conversation at some point.
It sure does. So was how did it come to be? Was it that you're I remember you only had either 1 or 2 kids when you first started out the project. Were you looking for conversations just like this? Did you strike up a conversation with some of your fellow dads about like, "Yeah, I have these questions," or, "Yeah, I've been thinking about this, but I don't know who to talk to."
Yeah, as with most things, I have to give credit to my wife,
Attaboy.
because I was helping her build a motherhood radio show, and
Okay.
so her and her partner had a show called Mom Life Yo, and they felt as though the conversations around motherhood were not people that looked like them
Uh-huh.
or
Weren't
sounded like
inclusive.
them or had that same
Yeah.
sort of experience. And
Mhm.
so there was a disconnect there, and they really wanted to, talk the real about motherhood
Yeah.
and not just sugarcoat this and like, hey, this is what we're really going through. And
Yeah.
so their show was awesome, and they would have guests on, and invariably most of the guests they had were women
Mhm.
and were moms, and I was helping to engineer their show and
As
making
you
sure
do.
everything was
This
good.
man is
And
seriously tech savvy, by the way. My gosh.
this is true. It's been a gift I've been given and something that I've definitely worked at. But they, would invariably like turn to me and be like, "What do dads think about this?" I'm like, "Oh, well, let me speak for all dad.
All dads. I will
Let
speak in one
me speak
of
for all
one
dads
voice.
right now." Yeah. And then that sort of turned into like, "Hey, you should really put
Perfect.
together a dad show."
Well, and by the way, I don't it does feel like in general it feels like motherhood we because women are communicators, right? We tend to be the communicators, the gatherers. We'll talk through stuff, sometimes to death, like, but getting men to talk about stuff sometimes can be difficult. So creating a space for men to do that safely, and men that are it's not like y'all have all this gray hair and all this, age on you. Younger guys that find themselves in the midst of fatherhood.
Yeah, I feel like it's not easy for men to share certain challenges and whatnot. And I do think that that is changing quite a
Yeah,
bit. You know, I
it
think
feels
like
like it.
in generations past, that was seen as a weakness. Like
Mhm,
you just didn't share that. You know what I mean? And I was sort of raised that way as well, where you didn't really show, what was bothering you as much. You just sort of dealt with it, suck it up, deal with it, and that was sort of the mantra I feel like back in the day. And so I think that the modern dad today needs to be a lot more in tune with what they're feeling. We are living in a time in which there's just so much that you're constantly trying to balance
yeah,
and manage, that without having some sort of an outlet, I mean,
mhm,
it's really quick and easy to burn out.
yeah,
And the last thing anybody wants is to do something that you would regret, to
right.
say something you'd regret, and
Or not be
create some sort of trauma,
available, by the way,
or
to
not be
your kids,
available.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the thing.
And the thing is this, is that, like, these tools and resources are not super readily available. I mean, we're just inundated with so much information today
And it's
that,
hard
like,
to cut
unless
through
you're
the
really seeking it out.
noise.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if you are seeking it out,
Yeah,
it's hard to find your people, it's hard to
mhm,
find your tribe, which
mhm,
is essentially sort of what inspired A Tribe Called Dad as well, is like this idea of we're all a part of this tribe.
yeah,
And just like, other tribes would have, we have folks that are like, one of the most beautiful things about this community is we have people that have adult kids
mhm,
that have gone through it, that
mhm,
then can say to somebody behind them who has kids in high school,
yeah,
"Hey, it's gonna be okay."
right,
Like, and these are the mistakes I made.
yeah.
So, and not saying that like everything I did right will work for you either.
But here's some tools, or here's an option, or another perspective. Look, the idea of having somebody it's a form of mentorship, right? It's having somebody who's down the road a piece turn around and give you a good word, give you a hand up, give you space to talk about, what you're going through, because there's aspects of it that I'm sure feel very solitary.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think, you know, what's crazy about parenthood in general is, that I think is the hardest job.
Mm, I
Everything else
agree.
that I do professionally is it's a lot easier. I mean, like there's some real challenges, of course, in my career, but they don't they're not even in the same category as like the challenges of coming home and being present as a dad.
Right.
And there is no playbook
No.
to any of this as well, so you're kind of figuring these things out as you go. And to me, I think this is a tremendous progress to be able to say, hey, instead of us just having to make mistakes ourselves, what if we could learn from each other's
Yeah.
mistakes? What if we could learn from each other's successes as well? How can I implement something that you've done in your household
Yeah.
that's working for you?
Um, take me back to, and share as much as you're willing to share, uh, about your own father, because I imagine, how we're raised, it does it inform how you raise your own kids?
Yes. And so I guess the easiest way to approach this was, I was raised in the 80s.
Mhm.
I was born in 1980. So, coming up through that, there was no internet.
Nope.
There weren't cell phones and things
Nope.
like that. Right. So like, it was a much different world, then. And, more specifically, my father was an entrepreneur, still is, runs
Mhm.
his own law practice. And he had to be at work.
Yeah.
Like, he was the breadwinner. He was um, my mom had a part-time job once we were born. She moved from a full-time job as a teacher and then became basically part-time working and really a stay-at-home mom, to be able to help raise us. But, I had a lot of resentment towards my father for many years,
Mm.
and I had to forgive him for that, and it's been a journey.
What did that forgiveness come as you became a father, or did it come earlier?
No, it came, actually. I became a father. We had our first daughter, had our second daughter, and I still didn't forgive him because I was looking at this from the perspective of what my reality is. And I'm an entrepreneur, but I am also prioritizing, raising my kids as well. And
Mhm.
yes, there were these factors, but there was this trauma that I had that I needed to release and really be able to release him from,
Mhm.
and release that of myself as well. And so forgiveness is
It's a big
huge.
one. Big one.
It's a big word, and it takes a lot
Sure
to
does.
be able to do that. But what I did learn, which I think is really powerful in sharing too, is I always thought that you had to have a conversation with somebody in order to achieve forgiveness,
Mhm.
and like that they needed to, like, there needed to be this dialogue, and it's like,
Yes.
oh, you did this to me, and oh, okay, so I
Yeah.
forgive you. Okay, I forgive you
Yeah.
too. Like, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Whereas you can forgive somebody in your heart without even having that
Absolutely.
conversation.
And can I also say something else about forgiveness that I think is important for us to know because we've been in this era for a while now of these grand apologies that sometimes fall empty and fall on deaf ears and are hollow, right? That don't go far enough. Is that I think that there's no guarantee that when you apologize to someone that they will or have to accept it. That's a tough truth.
Yes, it really is. It really is. And I think, yeah, forgiveness is a personal
Sure it is.
thing.
It's a personal voyage. Yep.
It really is. And I think I had to learn that. And I think that that really opened up things to that has informed my fatherhood journey as well.
Mhm.
Now there's a lot of things that my parents did really well,
Yep.
and that I'm really grateful for, and then of course, with every generation, I feel like
We
I hope
learn
my
more,
kids are,
right?
yeah, I hope my kids are better parents than I am.
Sure. Sure.
Like, I mean, I really do. I hope that that happens, because that's progress.
So I want to know. So this community you've built, I think it's incredible. Sharing tips, sharing resources, sharing some wisdom along the way. Um, I'm curious about what it is that is on the minds of fathers right now. What's the thing that's keeping them awake at night?
I think if I had to put it into a couple of categories, like one of the biggest ones is that I think a lot of people resonate with is, am I doing this right?
Mhm.
Am I worthy to be a father? Like, where's the value in that? And do I even deserve this position? And am I doing this right? And like, there's so many times that that thought pops up, I think, for a lot of fathers. And it's
Mhm.
because, there are so many different factors and things that you're balancing. And I mean, that's really a big one, and, I think with fatherhood, it is different to have girls versus
Mhm.
having boys.
Mhm.
I think life stage
Mhm.
matters as well. So, I think once your kids start getting into a space where, when they're young, you're just trying to keep them alive.
Yeah.
You're just really
Pretty
trying to,
basic
like, make
needs.
sure that they
Right.
survive. Yeah,
Yeah.
basic needs, and at the same time, you're adjusting to life now, which
Yeah.
is much different. And then I think as your kids grow up, you start thinking about some of these bigger concepts.
Yeah.
Am I preparing my kids for what would
This
come
world.
later?
Yeah.
Will they become good human beings?
Yeah.
What am I feeding my kids?
For sure.
Literally and figuratively, right? Like, how am I feeding them, and what kind of a dad am I going to be? I think when it comes to raising girls, like, one of the biggest things that I know gets talked about a lot with in fatherhood is, that as the father daughter relationship is so sacred, it's so special, that's there, and a lot of women, choose their mate based on who their
Yeah.
father is or was not, and
Yeah.
so, am I being a good enough example
Example, for sure.
of what that looks like, and then
Well,
the same with the boys. Like,
yeah.
I always say that my boys they're the sons I never knew I needed.
Say more about that.
I was perfectly content being a girl dad. I loved it. I mean,
You really relish that role.
I had T-shirt. I was like, girl dad, like,
It's now at the Goodwill.
yeah. I work out in it now. But
Still a girl dad, but
the
also
but yeah, with my sons, there's just something about it, like the bond between a father and son is something that I just didn't know I needed in my life,
Mm.
and people would ask me, sort of very cliche, people would ask me, in that in between before I had our boys, it would be like, hey, so are you guys gonna try to have another? Are you gonna try to have your son? And I'm just like, no. Which, by the way, none of our kids were our plans. They
Okay,
were all
okay.
they were all God's plan, but
Yeah,
not our plans
right.
necessarily. So we've had the good fortune of not having to go through some of the trials and
Yeah.
tribulations that people go
Some
through
folks
when
have it's hard
trying
for
to
them
do
to
that.
create a family for sure.
Yeah, I mean, some of our friends kind of joke where it's, hey, we should separate you guys because otherwise you'll have you'll have a whole football team,
Well,
but
you almost got a starting, lineup for
Yeah,
basketball
we've
team,
almost
right?
got a basketball
Oh
team, but
god.
yeah, my sons, man, like I see there'll be moments where I'm like holding my son, or I'll come home after work and it's different. The response is different when my son
Hmm.
runs to me, and the way that my son looks at me,
Mm.
like is different. And even for the 1 year old, like I can feel that already. I can sense that already.
That's so interesting, and they're so young. And you were talking about the things that fathers have to contend with now. You think about technology, you think about, identity and gender expression and, just even how we move through the world. There's bigger concepts. And I suppose you kind of have to get back to basics with kids, right? Like, and as a father, you really have to establish that line of communication.
Yeah, I think it's also really important to obviously be on the same page with your partner, with your
Yep.
spouse, with
Yep.
your, whatever the situation may be. I think one of the things that we've talked about on the podcast that's been a really great like takeaway over the years is really establishing family values
Mhm.
and really taking inventory of like, hey, as a family, what are things that are important to us?
Yeah, your mission statement, right? Like, in a way, it's this is who we are. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think it gives everybody a North Star,
North
like, in the
Star.
same way it does for a company.
Yeah.
When you build a company, you have to create a mission statement. You have to create a vision statement. This is what we're about.
I imagine even if you are a single father, I mean, and you've got or because by the way, not all family units look the same. I really recognize that, you recognize that. That's the reality of the world. Families are fractured, families are complicated, families are all of the things, all of the above. But even in a single dad, if you're raising, kiddos on your own, even having that, like, mission statement plan of who we are as a unit, that still matters.
Well, yeah, I think for anybody who's been a part of a company, whether you've been an employee at a company or you're an entrepreneur and you've started a company, you understand how important that mission statement is. And,
Yeah.
you know, in times of trouble, you go back to that mission statement. Or
Mm.
or when you hit that fork in the road, you go back to that mission statement and like, hey, is this what we're about? No, 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 no. Oh,
Yeah,
wait, no, we're not about this,
yeah,
and there are a lot of times that comes up, in this journey of parenthood. And so I
yeah,
think having that outlined, being sure that that's, plain, easy to understand, that like the kids understand it
yeah,
as well, I think
yeah,
it's really helpful.
yeah. I like the North Star aspect. I think that you might need if you don't have it already, you might have to add that to the ink on your arm. Uh, I always like to give people a little something. So, give a little wisdom to a first-time father out there who's feeling knackered, has not had sleep yet because the baby is just fresh home from the hospital. Give him, a little word of encouragement.
Yeah, yeah, this too shall pass. No, I mean, but in all seriousness, there's a season for each of these
Yeah,
things.
isn't there?
And even right now, I mean, we are experiencing that right now with a newborn on our side. And, my wife and I have to continue to remind ourselves that, we're going to want these days back at some point,
They are
and I think
fleeting.
that that's what's really powerful about having a community and having people that have gone through that. And, I'll run into people all the time when they find out, we've got a newborn or whatnot, or I'm holding, our son, and somebody will come up to me and be like, it's gonna fly by fast. And it's like, yep, it will. And you're absolutely right. And so I think, for that dad that's out there, or that parent that's out there, I think like really be in the present moment. I think there's all these things that we feel so much pressure where it's like, I need to do this right now, I need to do that right now. And ultimately, the last thing you'll want is to regret not being there when your son or daughter came home and was super excited about this art project they had just made, and you were out here on your phone trying to text somebody back,
Yeah.
and miss that moment. And so, it's impossible to make all of them. You
Of
can't make
course.
all of them,
Do your
but
best. Give yourself
but
some
I think
grace.
you just be more conscious. Give
Yeah.
yourself grace, yeah, but
Yeah.
also be intentional about
Yeah.
parenthood.
Yeah.
I think approach it with this intent that parenthood is not something that's being done to me or that's being forced on me, but something that I get to do, and I
Yeah, it's
get
a
to
privilege.
experience
It's
this,
an
because
honor.
not everybody gets that,
No,
and not
no.
everybody has that opportunity to experience that in their lives. And so I think it's really important to get perspective,
Yeah.
and ultimately that perspective can come from having a peer group that's around you, or just to be able to find that balance in your own life.
I love that. Listen, A Tribe Called Dad is a great podcast. It's enjoyable because you guys have just great rapport. It's a great community, lots of resources, lots of tips, lots of signposts for along the voyage this thing called life is. Hapa, anytime we connect, it's powerful. It's always meaningful to me, and I know it is for you. Thank you for making time for me.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on this. I'm so happy to be able to share this. And real quick, I would say too, we have separated out the episodes by life stage as well. So you can find that on a tribecalleddad.com, because sometimes podcast is
Yeah.
hard. It does it in
Yeah.
chronological order. So yeah, we have specific episodes for expecting dads, or specific episodes for newborn dads or
Well played.
teenage dads, even empty nest dads.
Oh, empty nest dads need love too. It's hard when they go. You're supposed to be all excited, which is nice to have, your space back and you can control the remote and have access to your own fridge. But still, empty nest dads need some love too. I love it. You know what? We create what we need in life, and you've done that. You have filled this void in a beautiful way. Check out the website, check out the podcast. And by the way, are you still teaching? Are you still teaching at Scratch Academy? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I have a new platform called the DJ Coach. We are the djcoach.com. We have students from 190 different countries. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. We're translating into different languages, leveraging some of the technology to be able to have me speak Mandarin. It's a trip. It's crazy.
This is incredible. This is incredible. So if you got a budding DJ in your home, check him out. What's your Instagram handle?
So it's just at DJ Hapa, at
Perfect.
DJHAPA. Yep.
I love you, brother. Take care of yourself. Thanks for joining
Love
me
you
on the
too.
podcast. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank
My best
you.
to the family. And for all of you watching and listening, thank you so much for being here with us. Big hugs to all the dads out there, or dads that are on their way to becoming fathers. We'll see you next time.